Sports Professor Rick Horrow, keeping score beyond the boardroom, beyond the scoreboard, everything that you want to know about the trillion-dollar business of sports. And it's a very interesting ceremony, celebration we have today. It's all about the business of South Florida baseball, the business of baseball in Palm Beach County, the economics of it. We have an incredible panel here today, and we'll introduce them in just a few minutes as well. As a part of and a prelude to the Palm Beach Sports Commission's annual Palm Beach County Sports Hall of Fame dinner, we hope to make this a regular branded opportunity. And today, we're talking about baseball. The interesting dynamic as well is today also happened to be the last games for the 4 spring training teams in Palm Beach County as they head north and as they start a season that's opening 1 week early this year, except it's 88 degrees today as we speak or so. So we still have a very interesting opportunity. Before we get into the panel discussion, let's get into a little bit of history, South Florida baseball. And I know I'm dating myself, but here is the Miami Marlins. It's not the current Florida Miami Marlins. This is the Miami Marlins Florida State Baseball League 1965 program. By the way, it was 10 cents. The box seat cost $1.50. I was just reminded by the president of minor league baseball that Rod Carew is on this roster, the Orlando roster affiliated with the Minnesota Twins. He did a pretty good job, by the way, at the end of this deal. And when you think about it, baseball has come a long way from those days. Cal Ripken and his dad played here. His dad coached here in the mid-'60s. That was really very important. His dad talked about don't just practice, but practice right. He uttered those words at Miami Stadium in South Florida 50-plus years ago. It was really important. Fast forward ahead to 1980, and Joe Robbie wanted to create a new baseball stadium for what could be an expansion franchise. Was lucky enough and honored enough to be part of that South Florida and Miami-Dade Sports Authority. I was, by the way, putting together some files in anticipation of this, and this is yellow. It's consistent with being 40 years old, findings and generalizations from then, and we had some observations after looking at some facilities for 15, 16 trips in those early days in 1981. We said baseball would provide a $2 billion economic boom long-term for the region. We needed a baseball team in South Florida. The debt service can't be satisfied by any sports complex, so you got to go through politics, and you needed a large amount of intergovernmental cooperation. And the cost of a sports facility largely depends on the philosophy of individual owners. I'd say we went through 7 different sports authorities, 48 appointed officials, 92 elected officials. By the way, something that this panel will find interesting. I was fired and dismissed by 7 different sports authorities before we finally found one that worked, and Joe Robbie and his stadium prevailed, but a little bit of history in this community. Fast forward a little bit to the 1980s, and another bridge to baseball in South Florida. Gary Carter, Hall of Famer, Palm Beach County Hall of Fame, inducted Hall of Fame in 2003, Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. When you think of Palm Beach County, you think of Gary Carter. He passed from us in February of 2012. His 324 homers don't give us enough description of how important Gary Carter was. He was deluged by so many autograph requests, by the way, that he published a thank you autograph request. Due to the high volume, I can't give everybody's request personally. But here's 4 million cards that I had for my people. That's one of the things that Gary did really well, and just a kind of a tribute to Gary Carter as well as we kind of go forward on stuff. And then finally, before we get into the specifics, Wayne Huizenga, the final kind of bridge in South Florida baseball, the 1997 champs, bought the franchise in 1993, a historical bridge, incredible credibility. I was honored to work with him. We needed an owner. We had a structure, we had a mandate, and Wayne Huizenga was that owner. We celebrate his life and his passing last week. as we get into the business of sports and the economics of baseball. And we talk about it in a situation today that's really interesting. The Palm Beach Sports Commission was created in 1985, privatized in 1992. Last year, 162 events brought to Palm Beach County in 43 sports, twice expanded portfolio to twice as much as it was in 2010, significant. And when you think about the economics, and we'll get into that from a different set of perspectives, 225,000 hotel room nights, $340 million of direct visitor spending last year alone. And baseball itself, will talk specifically about how that comprises a large number of the economic impact story. 4 out of the 15 Florida spring training teams are in Palm Beach County. 30 amateur tournaments last year alone. 30,000 room nights, 20 million direct visitor spending from amateur sports, baseball, hope I get the numbers right. And the ballpark of the Palm Beaches, which opened last year, an economic impact of nearly $80 million. So baseball has come a long way in this region generally and in South Florida. Our next segment, we'd like to talk specifically to the author of a lot of the impact in South Florida of minor Major League Baseball and otherwise, especially Palm Beach County, the head executive director of the Palm Beach County Sports Commission, George Lindley. George, how are you?
Thank you, Rick. I'm thrilled and honored to be here amongst your presence, a sports legend and icon in your own right, and then so many leaders in and within our community and the sports industry here today.
Tell us a little bit from your perspective of the growth of the Palm Beach County Sports Commission, your mandate, your purpose, and your perspective of the growth of baseball in Palm Beach County from an economic perspective.
Sure, and I'll try to be brief about the overview of our sports commission, as we are talking a lot about baseball, and baseball is a huge part of this county's identity. Our sports commission represents one of the first of its kind formed in the state of Florida. I will say that our county, Palm Beach County, is a pioneer in terms of recognizing that sports events is a vehicle to better a community by capturing visitors and revenues for their destination. And we, as you mentioned, were formed in 1985. We were also, the year we were privatized in 92, we were one of 16 sports commissions that was a founding member of our National Association of Sports Commissions. Today, that same association has over 1,000 members. And I think, if nothing else, that speaks to the growth of sports travel in the United States. Communities across the country recognize that sports travel is one of the most recession-resistant tourism products that exists, and they're trying to get in that field in order to obtain events and take part in that tourism product. And I'll give you a quick statistic. Last year, 143 counties in the United States used both public and private dollars to enhance sport facilities within their destination or to build or create a new sports venue. So it is one of the fastest growing segments of the overall tourism industry, and our county was a pioneer in that regard.
Tell us exactly how you view the baseball piece of this as part of the whole economic development puzzle.
This past year, 2017, and we're going to celebrate that tonight at our Palm Beach County Sports Hall of Fame celebration, was a historic year for our county, and specifically because of baseball. For 19 years, Roger Dean Stadium, which is now Roger Dean Chevrolet Stadium, it was the only facility, spring training complex in the state of Florida that was accommodating 2 MLB teams. Out in Arizona, that's the model, but that simply was not the model here in Florida, and Roger Dean Stadium was one of a kind. 2017 comes along, and there's 2 of those facilities that now exist in Florida, with the opening of the ballpark of the Palm Beaches. Palm Beach County is home to the only Major League Baseball spring training facilities that accommodates 2 teams. With that comes 2 marquee stadiums, world-class amenities, and total 26 MLB regulation diamonds. Now our county is not only the leader when it comes to spring training baseball in Florida, being home to 4 of the 15 teams that compete in Florida's Grapefruit League, but we're also positioned to be a leader in overall baseball activities. You mentioned the 30 amateur baseball tournaments that we held here last year. That was in combination with Roger Dean Stadium and the ballpark at the Palm Beaches. Because we have unrivaled baseball infrastructure in our county. We're home to the second largest high school aged baseball showcase in the United States. We're home to some of the most prestigious organizations in baseball, such as USA Baseball, the national governing body for the sport, hosts its national championships here every year for the last 15 years. And now they're expanding because of our new facility. We're home to some of the premier brands like Perfect Game and Prospect Select, and there's a laundry list that I could go over. But I'm confident when I say there's nobody else in Florida that has the baseball amenities that we have in this county, and now that's hosting the type of events outside of spring training.
You have two publicly funded facilities that are up and running, highest quality, two teams in each that are basically coexistent in each of those facilities, but yet two of them have a minor league team in the facility. The other facility has none, but yet that's an amateur sports facility. From your perspective as kind of the quasi-governing body, how do you juggle, maneuver to make sure you maximize the community benefit?
Well, first, our county is lucky to have great partners from Major League Baseball. At Roger Dean Stadium, home to the Miami Marlins and the St. Louis Cardinals, and at the ballpark of the Palm Beaches, home to the Washington Nationals and the world champion Houston Astros. In fact, our county, Palm Beach County, is celebrating the World Series championship alongside the people of Houston, and I find it quite special that the inaugural year of the ballpark at the Palm Beaches was a spark plug for the Houston Astros' first World Series championship in its 56 years of its franchise.
Are you personally taking credit for that? Is that
I'm
what you're
waiting.
saying?
Yeah, my entire staff is waiting for the World Series rings. They haven't arrived yet, but
yeah.
the championship.
Don't hold your breath, but I'm sure they're going to come soon.
But we have tremendous partners, and because of that relationship, that's helped develop this great atmosphere of other baseball enterprises. And we are grateful to be home to the Florida State League Baseball. We're grateful to be home to the Jupiter Hammerheads and the Palm Beach Cardinals. It's a lot of baseball in our county. That is a huge economic benefit. Some people don't realize those athletes, those players are staying in hotels and seasonal rentals for the duration of the season. And there are some big events around the minor league baseball season that creates a significant economic impact. And of course, it helps build us as a baseball destination. It increases our resume and our stature when we're going out recruiting sporting or baseball events to our community.
One more question, then we'll go to the next person on the panel. The community was fairly close to losing everything. I know there were clauses in the respective leases around spring training baseball that unless you have a minimum number of teams, the other teams could leave, and you navigated that, and now you have a pretty set deal for 4 teams through the bonding period of the facilities. How close were we to losing?
There was a lot of intense conversations about the ROI for significant investment, and our sports commission was used as an instrument to present in front of our Board of County Commissioners to determine how this venue can be a tourism vehicle. And one of the key components of the discussion for our county was outside of spring training, that we could become this leader in terms of hosting national and global baseball tournaments during the county's off-season when our hospitality industry needs the business the most. And there were times that the conversation about this happening was in doubt, but I can't speak enough about our leadership at Palm Beach County and the leadership at the state level, and Pat could probably talk to that, because it's truly a partnership between the state of Florida, who also put in an incentive for this stadium, the county, and then the 2 teams. And we're very grateful that this happened, because in addition to recognizing the economic benefits from this new facility, it preserved spring training baseball on the east coast of Florida.
Final question for you, Release now. Political businessman, you cut across a number of different dimensions. We talked about the $80 million of economic impact for one ballpark. Obviously, there is that and more with the other one, with the 2 FSL teams. A lot of it's economic, but a lot of this is anecdotal and quality of life. It's often the hardest to prove, but the easiest to understand. How would you put it into words?
I always say, going back to when I was talking about sports being one of the premier tourism products out there, recession resistant, but it also brings that other element. It provides entertainment for a local community. It provides or encourages youth participation in sports. When we're hosting a national or an international baseball event, there's opportunities for our local teams here in South Florida to participate against athletes from Missouri, from California, from Texas, or even from the Caribbean or overseas, from a number of different countries, that if we did not bring that event here, they would not have that opportunity. And so in addition to the economics, sports creates the entertainment for our community, participation for our youth and adults, and it teaches and demonstrates life lessons that there are very few other products in the entertainment tourism sector that would demonstrate like sports.
George Lindley, local perspective but national words of wisdom. Thank you very much. President, CEO, Minor League Baseball, Pat O'Connor, guru. You've shepherded minor league baseball through, since 2007, 41 million fans per year, basically over 13 seasons, 3 successive professional baseball agreements with Major League Baseball, 2 collective bargaining agreements with the Association of Minor League Umpires, brought together minor league baseball clubs in digital rights, agreements with MLB Advanced Media, diversity initiatives, minor league baseball enterprises. When are you going to start doing something?
Well, you stick around long enough, you're expected to accomplish a thing or two. But I have to credit everything to our great membership, 160 communities throughout the U.S., a committed ownership group, committed staff, dedicated fans, and it's been a good run. And we still have quite a bit of work to do. But we are very comfortable in our skin. We know what we are. We kind of have a good idea of what we're not. And we continue to provide affordable family entertainment for fans throughout the country.
And I will tell this story very quickly, that as I've gotten to know you and know you for a long time and realize your sense of leadership and knowing everybody at the meetings, you are not only humble about your role, but if I start over promoting you, you really get mad. So I'm not going to promote you.
Look, in a leadership role like this, I am nothing but a steward. I've been put in charge to shepherd an organization, as you indicated, to build consensus, to differentiate right from wrong, try to do what's good for our communities who invest so much in our product, and to serve our fans. Minor League Baseball is around primarily for 2 reasons. Well, number 1, for our fans, and number 2, for Major League Baseball. And as long as you keep that in focus, and as one of my vice presidents like to say, if we stick to our knitting, we've got a good product, we've got a good business model, and we have the ability to do good.
And also, which is kind of interesting, and no, we're not comparing, but you have 160 owners, bosses, who will blame you if the balance sheet doesn't work really well, and they'll take credit if the balance sheet works well for them. But you basically have to create an environment to maximize revenue and fan enjoyment for 160 bosses, which is very difficult.
Well, I mean, it's a well-known fact. They all can do my job better than I do. We all know that. But the fact of the matter is that it is a very diverse group. We're from coast to coast. We're in cities of 24,000 to state capitals and major metropolitan areas throughout the U.S. So it is a challenge. But what you have to do is you side with right and wrong, and you lead to the majority, and make sure that all ships rise on the high tide. And when you try to put deals together, you service the majority and try not to leave anybody behind. And we've been able to do that. It takes a great deal of cooperation. It takes a great deal of vision on the ownership's part to look past the short term, what it might cost me in this one instance, but the whole is greater. We've got great partners at Major League Baseball, and we've got great partners throughout the U.S. and the communities we call home.
So Major League Baseball, you have negotiated 3 successive professional baseball agreements. They're ongoing. The momentum continues. It is a very significant partnership. Describe the partnership a little bit for people.
Well, in a nutshell, Major League Baseball owns the player contracts, top to bottom. Everything that you see on the field is owned and controlled by Major League Baseball. We in turn agree to provide the venue and make sure that players and coaches get from place to play those games. It's a very detailed agreement, but it spells it out in minutia and minute detail that allows this to work. And I would add that, you know, the professional baseball agreement, which you refer to, was first signed in 1901. So, you know, there's a lot of history. There's a lot of continuity to what we do, and we've had to kind of ebb and flow with the changes at home with our communities, with the changes in player development, and the changes that go on at the major league level. But, you know, we have been able to expand and adapt, and we are partners with Major League Baseball on key areas. Obviously, the players are important. You can't do this without the players. But as you mentioned, our internet, our national marketing has ties. They are our licensing agent on our licensing program that allows us to sell $70 million of merchandise throughout the year. So there are a lot of, every major league umpire in the last 35 years has come through the minor leagues. So, you know, we have a minor league umpire development program that produces the players. You know, we look at our job as, aside from servicing our fans in 160 communities, we are the research and development arm for Major League Baseball. We develop, obviously, the players, but we develop umpires, we develop fans, we develop executives, and we develop corporate partners. And because of scale, we can service far many more corporate partners and communities and community leaders because of our scale, unlike Major League Baseball.
Obviously, speaking of the experimentation, I think it's public. Talk about what happens in extra innings this year.
Well, this is somewhat controversial, but when you look at this from a couple of different perspectives, we're going to adopt the international rule that beginning in the 10th inning of a tied game, we will start the inning with a runner on second base. And I have been called anything from a genius to an idiot to do this. For us, it was really simple. It's a business case from the standpoint that when you start a game with 5,000 people, end an extra inning game with 300 to 500, your fans clearly don't appreciate and enjoy the product. The bigger picture for us, Rick, is the fact that this is a player development issue. Yeah. We're dealing with young and developing arms in most cases. And when you go 10, 12, 13 innings deep into your bullpen, you not only tax those players that night, but you tax them the next couple of nights because they're not as resilient, they're not as matured and aged as a professional athlete. So that creates a situation where we have to start moving pitchers and players throughout the system. And it's very cost effective, it's cost ineffective, it's very inefficient. And what it does is it creates a great disruption in the player development for some of these players. So when you add the whole thing up, you know, we're going to try it. And I put it akin to, and you and I talked about this, what Commissioner Bettman did with the NHL when he pulled 2 players off the ice in overtime. And you were gracious enough to get me an answer from him on the reaction to that. When you look what the NFL has done with its overtime and what the NCAA football people have done with their overtimes, I had a guy ask me, he goes, you know, my goodness, what are you doing to my game? And I said, well, Jeff, I'm bringing it into the 21st century for you, and that's really how we view this. We think the fans are going to enjoy it. Fans today don't have great attention spans. I had a young man send me a note, and he goes, I hate the fact that my generation with a 7-second attention span is ruining the game of baseball. The reality is we're dealing with an audience today who wants action. They want finality. And I said, when anecdotally you look, and our friends in the Mexican League did a quick survey, 60% of all of their fans supported the rule change. 80% of fans 30 and under supported the rule change. So I think that we're leaving behind the traditionalists, and I am one of those. In a perfect world, I wouldn't do this. But as the CEO of a company with not only today, but the future of this game in my hands or in the hands of our organization, I felt it was something that was worth a try.
Grassroots, El Paso Chihuahuas, Nashville Sounds. When you look at the dynamics and the interrelationships of the teams within those communities, you do an incredible job across the board of making the communities relevant and vice versa with the teams. It's not just luck. How do you do that?
Well, you know, of all the things that could be, beset us and set us back or be a threat to minor league baseball, I think relevancy is number one on the list. If you lose relevancy in your community, then you're dead in the water. You have no chance. So I think that what we've done is we have created four corners of an environment. And I look at my job as, my job is to create the environment that allow these clubs to go out and excel on a day-to-day basis. I'm blessed with 160 teams of gifted executives, committed ownership, who are in these communities on a regular basis. They're 24/7, 365 in every sense of the word. So you have to continue to provide inventory and options that they can't alone provide. And then if it is a commercial venture, sell it to people that they don't have an opportunity to sell it. Otherwise, you stand back and you let them do what they do best. And it is in the DNA of a minor league executive to work hard, to be entrenched in his community, to give more than receive, and to understand you are but a steward and you don't own anything other than the right to get up and go to work, and that right is in all actuality a privilege.
Palm Beach County, interesting market. It is in the shadow of the major league team, which is down the road, a little farther down the road than it was before, but 4 or 5 million people, and some like the idea of the 4-team, 2-stadium issue in Palm Beach County and keep that as home. Some people speak about this as a larger region. So give us your perspective.
Well, first I thought George was spot on that the move of 2 teams in Palm Beach County probably saved spring training baseball in Florida on the southeast coast, no question about it. There's a deep and rich and long history of baseball in this part of the state, and certainly minor league baseball. I can go back to Ann and Bob Sowers running the West Palm Beach Expos, and Sonny Hirsch and Larry Bluestein running the Miami Marlins. I mean, that's those are my guys. But it is extremely rich in baseball history. The facilities, and you look at the quality of the products, the quality of the partners, the number of world champions residing in those 4 stadiums. I know now right now is probably not a little bit of a painful time for Marlins fans, but you have to understand they have 2 world championships under their belt. It's a storied franchise, and it will come back. There's no question about that. The Washington Nationals are always within striking distance. You might have back-to-back world champions, and it not be the Astros in the coming year. You just never know. But it is an area that I've had more than one major league owner tell me that the value of the deal is one thing, but in this day and age, you are going to get the facility that you need regardless of where you go. The difference and the tipping of the scales comes in, you want to be places where you're wanted and you're welcomed when you get there. And I think that's what sets Palm Beach County apart. Fan reaction, the fan turnout, the government and agency relationships make this a destination for the clubs, for the players, and for their fans that they want to come here. And let's face it, I mean, a couple of my panelists flew out of the Northeast today. There are worse places to be this time of year than Southeast Florida. But even into the minor league season, the quote-unquote experiment at Roger Dean of 2 teams, 140 games over the course of the summer in 152 days has been a success. And I thought George was very accurate in his recognition of the fact that the minor league baseball, while there is an economic impact, and it's not just Florida State League, it's Gulf Coast League, it's extended spring training, it's rehab assignments, but it's really a quality of life issue. So often when we get into big commercial deals, the residents are sometimes left behind. It goes beyond what the locals. And this community has done a very good job of providing leave-behinds and takeaways for the local fans.
I know you say it's staff and league presidents and team owners, but it's also you, and minor league baseball is in very good hands. Thank you, Pat O'Connor.
Thank you, Rick.
Appreciate it. Steve Salem, President Cal Ripken Senior Foundation. You've been with the organization since March of 2006. You took the organization from $1 million annual budget to more than $30 million this year, which is incredible. The Badges for Baseball program and National Youth Development Park Initiative you'll talk about. But you also served as Vice President of Government Relations for the Boys and Girls Clubs of America, raising more than $500 million for local clubs across the country in at-risk communities, including the Adam Walsh Child Safety and Protection Act of 2006, the Amber Alert program are a couple of initiatives that you're directly involved in. I can't think of anything that's more important or anybody more important than Steve Salem. So thank you for being here. It's one of the few compliments I'll ever bestow on you.
It's
but
the
I mean
only.
it sincerely. Cut. I'm tired of it. I can't get away with it. I can't feel it. Steve, thank you very much for coming down here. And give us your perspective on what it's like to run the Cal Ripken Senior Foundation.
Well, first of all, I want to reiterate what Pat just said. You know, I agree with you so much, Pat, when you said we're just stewards. I'm in the same position. My job is, and anyone in my field, my job is to leave things better than when I took it over. That's it. And if you don't lose sight of the fact that it's not about you, it's about making it better for whoever comes in after you, you stay on the right track. But working with Cal and Bill Ripken, of course, is an incredible privilege. Vi Ripken, their mom, is a wonderful woman. Cal Sr., who I had the real pleasure of knowing before he passed away, was a wonderful guy. You know, and we're doing wonderful things for his legacy. Really, it's about Cal Sr.'s legacy, not about Junior, not about Bill, but about Cal Sr.
But it's also your ability to take Cal and Billy and Senior and the brand and monetize it.
Right.
And that can't be that easy. So give us kind of secrets to your success.
Well, it's not secrets to my success. Number one, I've had some incredible mentors who have taught me what their secrets were, and I've tried to use them and maybe make them a little bit better. But what I have tried to do is take, you know, we're so unique because we have this brand, really, which is Cal, and his Iron Man legacy that he's given all of us, and all the things that he stands for, like hard work, showing up every day, no matter what, family values. It's not so much about his great success on the baseball field as it is what he's done off the baseball field, and that's what, you know, we try and carry forward, and it makes us unique. And so when we do try and monetize it, and I hate to use those words because it's not about money, it's about generating resources so we can help the kids, but at the end of the day, it's monetizing it. We don't focus on baseball, we focus on making our country a better place for these kids. And when we do that, the economic impact, you talk about economic impact of sports, I wouldn't begin to know how to measure it, but we're keeping kids not just out of prison, but alive in the worst neighborhoods in America. We're helping them get through, not just stay in school, but get through school and go to college. In the process, they're becoming baseball fans. And, you know, as Pat can tell you way better than I can, professional baseball has an initiative about getting minorities back in the game, watching the game, playing the game. Major League Baseball has an initiative where you go out, throw a ball with your dad. Well, these kids don't have a dad. So how do you do that? Yeah. Well, you find someone to do it with them. They become baseball fans. They get jobs. Maybe they, you know, some of these kids have tremendous athletic ability. And every once in a while, we find one that needs to, you know, our program is, we use baseball as a hook to get kids doing something positive. If we can get them onto this field and play a little baseball, then they're not going over here and getting arrested, joining a gang, getting killed. It's not about having baseball talent. They hold the bat like this. If they throw a ball with the right hand, they instinctively think the mitt goes on their right hand. So these are not baseball players, but every once in a while you find an athlete that, you know, your eyes pop out of your head, and we try and give them opportunities to pursue sports as well.
I, of course, was tremendously impressed with Cal's vision and business acumen before we did our interview last September for Power of Sports. But then to see him at the opening of the Eddie Murray Field in Baltimore, and the passion that he puts together as all in. It's not just his name. So talk about what it's like working with him on implementing this.
So let me start by saying we have it's really a national initiative now where we call it our National Youth Development Park Initiative. And we're going into some of the toughest neighborhoods in America, across the country. We've built, in 2019, we'll hit number 100. We're building incredible synthetic turf, state-of-the-art, parks in the worst neighborhoods in America. So Eddie Murray Field is in West Baltimore, exactly where the rioting started in Baltimore, and the city almost burned down, and some neighborhoods did. And here in this drug-torn neighborhood, we were able to find a group called the James Mosher Little League, which is the oldest African-American Little League in America, which nobody really knew about. We certainly didn't. Before we go in and make an investment, these parks cost $1 million to $2 million a piece. And as I said, we're closing in on number 100 now, so it's a huge investment. Before we do that, we find a local partner who owns the park. They own the field. We don't. We give it to them. And the James Mosher Little League is this group of primarily African-American men, grandfathers, who live in this neighborhood. The field is attached to an elementary school, so there's always eyeballs on it because of the school and because of the Mosher Little League coaches who live in the community. And these guys work with the kids from this neighborhood. These are the kids who, in 2 years, will be at the high school where the rioting started, Frederick Douglass High School. And so the impact there, I mean, if we were to drive there now, field is surrounded by drug dealers every single day, the streets around the field. But there's not a scratch on the field. There's no graffiti, nothing. It's really amazing. And we did name it after Eddie Murray, in honor of Eddie. You know, he's beloved in Baltimore, and he's a wonderful guy. But you're right when you said about Cal and how invested he is in this. He's all in. There's nobody who cares more about these kids that I've ever met than Cal. He doesn't always realize the impact he has on communities because, you know, Cal retired in 2001. These kids are 12 years old. They don't really know who Cal is. They've never seen him play. But you would never know that. When we go, it doesn't matter what neighborhood we go into with Cal, the entire neighborhood comes out. You saw that. Yeah. And you also saw when we were there, the people surrounding the field.
Yeah, and they don't, this is hallowed ground.
Yeah.
It's hallowed ground, which is really interesting. Segue to South Florida a bit, hallowed ground as well. When we did a filming, I got in front of the Miami Stadium sign. Unfortunately, it was the Miami Stadium market because there was no Miami Stadium sign anymore. It was painted the old Marlins colors, which is interesting. Cal's a hero, Cal Sr., as I said earlier, continues his managerial career in South Florida, in Miami in the late 60s, and Cal plays here. Cal goes from third to short, I think it was, and
right.
This was a seminal moment. The Marlins were credited for kind of doing that. The ties with Cal's dad and Cal to South Florida, talk about that a little bit.
Well, it predates me, of course, but Cal gives a lot of credit, although he was in the minors for a short time, gives a lot of credit to the folks in Miami for having such a positive impact on him and on his family with his dad. And it's something I didn't know about, honestly, until we came down here. And you asked him, or Dan asked him. So that was new for me, but yeah, there's no question it was a part of his life, an important part of his life. And one of the things we've talked about since that dinner was finding a way to honor Cal Sr. in Miami, because it would mean a lot to the Ripken family.
And maybe, kind of to finish this conversation, we need to have a separate dialogue with the Palm Beach County sports people, and there might be an opportunity to...
And don't forget the minor league baseball.
And minor league baseball.
I will say we do.
Here we go.
Cal Ripken baseball. Although they don't occupy our spring training facilities, we host Cal Ripken Baseball State Championship, Florida State Championship every year. And we've hosted Southeast Regional this year, and we've hosted other types of umbrellas under Cal Ripken Baseball,
right.
which is a great provider for youth sports. And we've hosted the rookie states, which is 7 and 8 year olds, and we've hosted the 10 and 12 year old. In fact, two summers ago, we were home to the Cal Ripken 10 and Under World Series, the Cal Ripken Baseball 10 and Under World Series at Gardens Park in Palm Beach Gardens, which is one of our premier youth baseball facilities. Yeah. So we're glad that Cal Ripken's had a great presence from an event side in the Palm Beaches.
That's great.
And there will be more. And ladies and gentlemen, after this is over, then there is a cocktail hour, and there will be deals made, ladies and gentlemen, just so you understand. Steve Salem, thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for that. Philanthropy, doing great by doing good. Brian Cooley is the president of sports and entertainment at EverFi. He'll tell you, but it's an education technology company focused on arming students with critical skills and learning opportunities. The numbers are prolific. 220,000 K through 12 students on behalf of 800 plus private sector partners, including all the stick and ball, NFL, NBA, NHL, MLB, 80 pro sports teams, numerous athletes and coaches, and the company has grown from, a number still might be wrong, but from 40 employees to over 500. You were, we won't hold this against you, a Georgetown University, a passionate Hoya fan. How are they doing in the Oh, they're not in the tournament.
Is it still basketball season?
It's not. Oh, I'm sorry. And you're. Oh, you don't have a.
I'm
you
on
don't,
to baseball already.
And football. Oh, you don't have a football team. Well, that's okay. Brian Cooley. Sorry. EverFi. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you, Rick, for that incredibly warm introduction, and thank you for bringing up our my alma mater. We've not been where we need to be, but we're on our way back with Patrick Ewing, I hope.
Well, and you will be, and clearly that's important, but what you do with EverFi even more important. So give us the elevator speech
Absolutely,
about
absolutely.
the company.
So 10 years ago, we started EverFi with really a concept that there are so many critical skills that I think are missing in schools today, so students are not necessarily being armed with the skills that can help them to be successful in life. And so what I'm talking about there are things like financial capability, helping a high school graduate understand how to balance a checkbook, understanding how to save money, understanding how to invest money, how to plan for their future. And it really starts, it goes back all the way back down to when kids are 5 and 6 years old, understanding wants versus needs and starting to develop that track record of financial capability and responsibility. We've built out a learning platform and a network that focuses on financial education as well as topics like diversity and inclusion, helping students understand many of the important lessons we've learned through the civil rights movement and other eras. Hispanic heritage is another big thing that we're focused on as well. Entrepreneurship, helping students think about STEM careers, so science, technology, engineering, and math. When you look at so many different industries, including the sports industry, there's a real focus on technology-driven careers, and many students at the current rate and pace are not ready for that. And so the idea is to really inspire them at a young age to help them build those skills. It's other topics like alcohol responsibility, or we've recently just launched a new program on opioid abuse prevention. So obviously prescription drugs and opioids in general are an amazing, incredible scourge on this country. 70 to 80,000 people overdosing on an annual basis, and it really starts with education at a young age, helping students understand how to make responsible choices, how to intervene on behalf of others. And so really, that's the concept of our company, is finding ways to fill in the cracks, if you will, within public education. And so we're incredibly fortunate to work with about 20,000 schools now. And everything that we do in terms of delivering these skills, which essentially are delivered in a video game-like environment, it's all free for K through 12 schools. And so the way that we've been able to do that is actually by partnering with the private sector. So as you mentioned, we're incredibly fortunate. We partner with about 800 different companies, and these companies are organizations that want to do good in their community. They want to not only make an impact on the young people in their community, they want to do it year after year after year. So they want to make a sustained investment and make a change. So cities like Baltimore, all over South Florida, in fact, when I think about Palm Beach County, we're involved with at least half the schools in this county and probably about 500 or 600 across the state of Florida. And so it's students at a young age learning those skills. We're also incredibly fortunate to work with just about all of the pro sports leagues. Baseball, both minor and major, are major parts of what we're thinking about in terms of how we can change the education paradigm within communities.
And so, obviously, and I use the word monetization again because that's the fuel to turn dreams into reality. The free offering to the schools rises and sets on getting corporations to understand what the value is. You personally work with IBM, Land Rover, and otherwise in your prior lives. Sure. So what's the key to get the 800 or so number of corporations involved in supporting these programs?
Right. It's a great question, and I think the idea of corporate social responsibility is not necessarily a new idea. I think companies, organizations, Nonprofits have been doing it for years and years, for decades. I think what is different now is I think companies, organizations, sports leagues, sports teams, individual athletes, and their foundations are really thinking about how they can act locally and how they can actually invest in probably the best nonprofit organization there is. And I would say that's our public school system. It's not about creating an alternate world where kids are getting educated online, but actually supporting teachers, supporting students and their families in the communities that they live in. And so I think when you bring that value proposition to an organization, there's something that's very attractive about that. I think the other thing, and we're a company now, 500 people, it's really interesting. On one side, we're an incredibly sort of high-tech company. We build gaming environments that help students build their skills. But on the other side, we actually have about 200 people who live in 48 states plus Canada, and they literally walk the halls on a daily basis. And so that's really critical, is you have to have, for that last mile, you have to have somebody who's gonna go train the teacher, who's gonna meet with the superintendent, who's actually gonna really get in there and who knows the circumstances within that community. So the last thing I would say on that, Rick, is that measurement is key. I think everybody who's investing in education innovation wants to see that it's making a difference. And so that's something that we're really proud of, is measuring everything within our platform so we can understand the number of times a student is logged on, we can understand how much they've learned, we can actually understand their thoughts and feedback based on the topics that they've studied.
Bring it back home to the economics of baseball. Tell us about the Summer Slugger program.
Absolutely. So about a year ago, we launched a program with Major League Baseball called Summer Slugger. And so this particular course is focused on helping students in 3rd and 4th grade build skills around reading and math comprehension. And so the summer period, as we know, 8 or 9 weeks of very little activity for students during the course of the summer. Many students in rural and urban environments don't have enrichment during the summer, and unfortunately, they're losing 35–40% of the skills that they built the year before. And so you think about the compounding impact of that year after year, and it's one of the reasons why kids are not able to finish high school, one of the reasons they're not able to matriculate to college. And frankly, one of the reasons why they're not able to realize maybe the dreams that they have. And so what we're trying to do is we've actually created a very interactive baseball-themed game where students actually have activities starting in the spring in schools, going all through the summer, new activities every day that are baseball-themed. And so the idea is to help them build those skills, but also, if you think about it, it's about introducing them to the game of baseball in a really fun way. And so at the end of the day, I think that we're going to be really capable of generating a lot of new fans for baseball.
Couple of metric, and it's a measurement issue you talked about before we get to Palm Beach County. The idea of what's in it for a corporation, you led with social responsibility. It seems more and more, too, your platforms lead to specific ROI return, ROI value. So there's an internal corporate dimension about doing good and doing great, but there's also this is going to help us at our bottom line as well.
I think so as well. So if you're in the game of baseball, minor league baseball or major league baseball, there's an incredible impact about actually having your program embedded into schools where kids are learning, where teachers are, where their parents are seeing it, and then actually activating and bringing those kids out to ballparks to actually have that experience. And so if they can go to their first minor league game, their first major league game, it's eye-opening. We all remember the first time we walked into a stadium and we're just blown away by the whole spectacle of it all. And that's where fandom starts. And I think if you can introduce it at a young age, where students actually see the relevance, similar to the world that Steve lives in, where they see baseball as a driving force, a convening force for helping them realize their dreams, I think it creates an incredibly tight bond.
Now, this is really about economics of baseball in Palm Beach County, but we're going to put an asterisk on it, and we're going to define economics for these purposes, meaning social responsibility, awareness, quality of life, et cetera. So give us some perspective about what teams in that spring training, minor league teams, what assets we have in Palm Beach County, and from your perspective, how it can ripple positively through the county.
Absolutely. So currently we're in about 50 schools across Palm Beach County right now, all the way to elementary, middle school, and high schools with a number of different programs. Across the southern Florida, we're working very closely with both of the clubs in Tampa Bay and also in Miami. And we've had activation with those folks. As we continue to grow that, it's all about those local communities in between. It's about extending it to minor league baseball cities as well. I think about all the things that are happening here from a tournament perspective, the excitement that is baseball in this community, and I think that we're certainly going to follow that. We see the Summer Slugger program continuing to grow. One of the other things that we want to do is get more athletes involved. Very good example, Jake Peavy, who's a Major League Baseball pitcher. He's a two-time Cy Young winner and a World Series champion. He's actually himself, through his foundation, very, very passionate about financial education. And so one of the things that he's done is actually, in all the cities that he played in throughout his career, he's actually sponsoring schools so that kids can build their financial skills. And so we do see a very strong growth opportunity in this county and also in Southern Florida.
So one of the side benefits of this, I guess, is that as George and others pioneer bringing franchises and assets to Palm Beach County, there are social responsibility alignments that can be generated as well, which help everybody.
Absolutely. And I think that's really what we think about it. We are an education network, and it's about finding the companies, the leagues, the teams that want to get involved, and we provide them the opportunity to get directly involved in the education innovation business.
Brian Cooley, thank you very much, and thank EverFi. Pat Rooney Jr., an incredible golfer. His putting stroke, he is. He is. But he's a successful businessman and respected community leader in Palm Beach County. He also was a representative in the Florida House, District 85, for 6 tremendously productive years. Palm Beach Gardens, North Palm Beach, Juneau, the Acreage, West Palm Beach. Serves as director for the Autism Project of Palm Beach County, founding member for the Potentia Academy of Green Acres, director and co-chair, Rooney's Golf Foundation, philanthropic, but recognized as a community leader, family involved with the Steelers, the Palm Beach Kennel Club, Bachelor of Arts in Political Science in '86 at Clemson, went to Villanova School of Law, JD, in 1989. Unlike George Lindley, his team is actively involved in the tournament. And just before we even start, as we speak, Pat Rooney is giving up the last 10 minutes of Villanova, Texas Tech in the Elite Eight to be with us and has not looked at his phone since the beginning of this show. Pat, thank you for being here.
Thanks, Rick. And I've been trying to discreetly,
and?
I don't know where the cameras are, so it's always tough. But I'm confident that Villanova is going to be able to take care of business today and get on to the Final Four.
Yeah, and you probably should be, although by the time this is shown, we'll see if that's absolutely correct or not, clearly. You've been involved, obviously, grew up here or involved in the business of sports and the economics of Palm Beach County generally. Your perspective of what sports has meant to Palm Beach County generally?
Well, I think you can't even measure it. It's it's so tremendously impactful in almost every aspect of life down here. You mentioned golf a little bit, tennis, soccer, water, fishing, all the things that we have just because of the beautiful natural resources that we have here. But as George mentioned, the ability to bring teams, from all levels, all age groups, including professional teams, to come down here because, again, of what we have to offer from a sunshine perspective, but also from a tax perspective and all this other kind of stuff. It's immeasurable, really. At the track, at the dog track that my family's had since 1970, we do probably about 50 to 55% of our business in these 3 months, January, February, and March. That a lot of businesses do, most of their business for that year. And to have spring training here and to have that baseball impact here, I can't tell you how many fans come into the track. They've got their St. Louis Cardinals stuff on, or now Houston Astros stuff. It definitely provides, and this is just a small, minuscule fraction of what those fans, restaurants and things that they're doing while they're here for this, month-long spring training. Sports in general, but specifically because I know we're talking about baseball, I can't quantify it really to tell you, but it's huge.
71-59, congratulations. You're going to San Antonio, okay? All right, everything okay now? You happy?
I'm good now. I'm good. I can concentrate.
Yeah, you can concentrate. restaurateur, entertainment business, national perspective, again, family Steelers ownership, and it is easy to quantify economically direct visitor spending, indirect visitor spending. A lot of that glazes over with the normal fan. You have a different perspective because you served as a politician for 6 years. So you had to hear the constant bombardment about public money for facilities. So how'd you come at all that? What's your perspective on that?
Well, I mean, of course, I've got one perspective because in Pittsburgh, when we built Heinz Field, there was public money involved in that. There was money from the city of Pittsburgh, there's money from the county, and there's money from the state. I think it was a great partnership, and it worked the way it's supposed to work there. You have the Pitt Panthers that play at Heinz Field. You have high school teams that play there. You have concerts that go on there. It truly is a multiple-use stadium in Pittsburgh, and it benefits that city tremendously. You know, when I was in the legislature, as time went on, the desire to do those public-private partnerships lessened severely, especially over the last few years. Up in Tallahassee. It was very difficult to even get the conversation started about, giving public money to help. And it wasn't just sports. We had a great film industry here in Florida, and that's taken a beating because, unfortunately, Rick, or whatever adjective you want to use, you're in competition. You're in competition with everybody. You're in competition with other states. You're in competition with other countries. Georgia, Louisiana, Tennessee, South Carolina. Noticed that Florida was not giving some of the incentives that they were giving in the film industry, so they've taken it over. They're doing shows now that pretend that they're in Florida, in Georgia. So you've got to be aware that whether you want to believe in the free markets and that people don't want to come here because of the natural resources and the low tax, you can believe all that, but money talks, and if someone's offering them a better deal, they're going to go somewhere else. Sports is no different. We were very fortunate in a lot of ways. You mentioned how close we were to losing the baseball presence here, and it was really close. We're fortunate enough to keep that and actually expand upon that with the ballpark of the Palm Beaches. But we lost another opportunity. The Atlanta Braves wanted to come down here too. They wanted to come to Lake Worth, and because timing is everything in life, we just did that deal with the ballpark of the Palm Beaches, and the county commission, and I understand it, didn't have the political desire to try to do that. But the Braves wanted to do it, and they wanted to do it last year. That's when they wanted to do it. I think they're going to end up going to Sarasota, which is fine. But can you imagine? We would have had 5 teams here in Palm Beach County, and I really count the Mets up in St. Lucie as part of us anyway. They're close enough. You would have had 6 teams in this region. I mean, you talk about the old days. We used to have the Dodgers up in Vero Beach, the Yankees down in Fort Lauderdale. We had all these teams around here, and again, they got different deals, so they went elsewhere. Maybe in the Dodgers' case, it was just more geographic issues. But when you're so close to getting that, and it's a money issue, you got to figure out a way to come up with the money and make that happen. Because, like I said in the beginning, the impact of having 5 teams here would have just been unbelievable. Especially, you would have had Lake Worth up to Jupiter covered, and that would have pretty much covered the whole county.
And from your perspective, spring training, from a political perspective, spring training, and I'm biased, and we're all kind of biased in a way, should be a political no-brainer because they're facilities that are $70, $80 million, whatever the number is, and they generate $80 million of annual economic activity if you believe the study for one ballpark alone. That's 2 in Palm Beach County. You got minor league teams as well. You got the amateur baseball with heads in beds that is very important from a tourism perspective, and the quality of life as well. And we've got a seminal time now. We have 15 in Florida, 15 in Arizona. We did a panel like this in Arizona, and their tourism director said, "Oh, we play nice with everybody, but we want to steal those teams. You bet. It's like the
Sure.
Saturn plant, but a stick and ball deal." So talk a little bit about that from Tallahassee's perspective. You're in an arms race, right?
Absolutely. I said again, just to reiterate, you're constantly in competition, and you might not sort of realize it when it's going on, but there are other places, whether they're other states or other countries or other cities that want or can see with the value of having something like, spring training, even though it's a very finite period, it's about 5 weeks, but so much else goes on along with that. You got pitchers and catchers coming. You've got the minor league aspect of it at Roger Dean. It's a year-round impact, really, and yeah, I understand the free market argument, and why should we use taxpayer dollars to do all this stuff? I get all that. I like to think of myself as a somewhat fiscally conservative Republican, but I also, when I went to Tallahassee, the thing that I spoke at breakfast and things was that I was going to take a business perspective there too. Being in charge of 500 employees and running 2 restaurants and things like that helped give me some idea of what it takes to have a chance to be successful. And sometimes you got to spend money to make money, and that's that doesn't jibe with government all the time and philosophies. A lot of times they're like, we are going to remain pure to our conservative fiscal responsibility philosophy, and to hell with whatever the consequences are going to be. And sometimes that's what happens. Again, going back to something like the film industry, it's really non-existent down here anymore. And you've got Disney here. You've got tremendous entertainment mogul types of businesses here, and we're not exploiting that, for lack of a better term, the way we should be. We should be, Rick, we should be creaming California right now. We should be creaming them with what we have here. Yeah, we got hurricanes, but they got earthquakes. At least with hurricanes, you get a little bit of forewarning. But it's virtually the same weather. It's the tax environment is so much better down here. The regulatory environment is so much better here. It takes a little bit of foresight to say, we should, if you want it, we should have the whole Hollywood industry here in Florida. We should.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the most passionate I've heard Pat Rooney in a long time. Where have you been? Why aren't you running again? Can we pass the hat? We're going to pass the hat. All right. Why can't
because
you?
it's 6 years up there, I figured out they don't know what to do about that, and I'm not going to sit around there and let them, twiddle their thumbs while Rome burns. So.
Here's my final question for you, and it's impacting all of us. Is Roethlisberger coming back, and where are the Steelers going to finish next year?
Again, Rick, it's a money decision. He's got little kids now. Yeah, I'm sure the body is breaking down at age 36, but $20 million heals a lot of wounds. So yeah, he's going to be back at least for another couple years.
Pat Rooney, thank you very much. Don't go anywhere. We need you to run again, but thank you very much for your comments. Let's just a final word from everybody, and we'll save the last word, George, for you. But start over here, Steve. What's your overall perspective of all of this?
Well, for me, as someone who's, my starting point is different than these guys, trying to change the trajectory of the lives of these at-risk kids and at-risk communities, sports can have such an incredible impact on that if it's used correctly and if it's used to help provide opportunities. And I hope that's what we're doing. And with help of guys like this, it's, the future should be great.
Mr. President?
Well, I think a couple of takeaways for me is one, that there's a great deal of validation for me in the last 45 minutes or so to summarize that, the need for corporate America and minor league baseball to look at the triple bottom line, which is a phrase now, not only economic, but ecologically and community and philanthropic. We've tried to aspire to that. Now that we have our business model in place, we can take care of the economic and focus on the other two. But to hear Pat, talk about the struggles of government, I'm very much in his camp that you have to make money to spend money. I believe in the quality of life. I believe in all that. But also the fact that, for our elected officials, it takes great vision and even more courage to step out, as Pat suggested they should. And I'm a firm believer in that as another fiscally conservative Republican. But I think that the communities that do it are proof positive that it works. And what we have learned is the communities that don't and later try to re-enter pay a much greater price for re-entry than they would have in the first time around.
Professor Cooley?
I think about an opportunity we had to meet Joe Torre recently, and he said baseball's a game of life. And it's really interesting. I mean, when you think about sports writ large and really about baseball, it's about practice, it's about fundamentals, it's about building skills that help you to be a leader, somebody who can communicate better, somebody who has loyalty, somebody who understands the value of being on a team. And there's so much to learn from that. And I think a couple things that are interesting, when you think about a changing demographic, when you think about millennial audiences or Gen Z, in many cases for folks like us, a really hard group to really figure out. One of the things is that they are consuming sports and entertainment in many non-traditional ways. And so one of the best ways I think that we can resonate with that community is really thinking about how we enrich the communities around them and how we really support them. And so no better way than to be in schools and to really support who they're becoming while helping to steward them as fans of the game.
Hate to do this, but we're going to do it again. A fired up, energized Pat Rooney one more time.
Listen, I didn't even mention the PGA of America going to Texas. That's another one that just irks me. But I don't want to sound too over the top negative, Rick. There's a lot of good things in Palm Beach County. I think the future is incredibly bright for this county. I think it's only going to get better. Yeah, I mean, we're going to lose some deals that we probably should have had, but there'll be other ones down the road. And hopefully the timing will be better so that when government needs to get involved, if the political will is to do that, they'll do what they need to do and help guys like George do the job that he's getting paid to do. But I think absolutely there's really no better place, I don't think, than Florida and this part of Florida. If you're in the sports business, you can't do any better than this.
Last word, Palm Beach County Sports Commission, George Lindley.
Well, thanks to everybody. Thank you, Rick. I think this was an excellent discussion and really demonstrates the power of sports. I'll conclude by going back to the business side, the economic side of sports, and what it means to communities. And I'll start with Palm Beach County. Our county did a job analysis report. And tourism is one of our leading industries, and tourism in our county supports 70,000 hospitality-based jobs. Out of those 70,000 jobs, sports and recreational activities represent about 8,500 plus, about 12% of the total hospitality-based jobs. So sports is a big engine for this community. And as I mentioned earlier, it is truly one of the most recession-resistant tourism products when communities are trying to host sporting events. During poor economic climates, when families are cutting back on discretionary spending and they're probably not taking that vacation to Disney World or going to Hawaii, when their son or daughter is playing in that 10 and under, 12 and under softball tournament or in that gymnastics meet or that swimming meet, that often becomes the family vacation. Or if you've been training for 6 months to run a marathon or a triathlon, you're less likely to let the increase in gas prices stop you from going to that event. And so because of that, sports, when you have a sports environment in your community and you use sports as a way to attract visitors, it's an incredible product that even during the poor economic climates can sustain a community and can bring value no matter what's happening around the world.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's links in a chain. So we started with the 1965 Florida Marlins, and this did cost 10 cents. We'll invoice that appropriately. But the bottom line is it begets the next step. We talk about Joe Robbie and his desire for a facility, and then Cal Ripken's legacy, and then Wayne Huizenga. And those are all trustees in a long history of reminding us how important business is in Palm Beach County, but sports and then baseball as well. If we all are trustees to make sure we part of a $1 trillion business to capture as much as we possibly can, we understand that the people around this panel have been given the responsibility of moving the legacy to the next step, both as far as ROI and profits concerned, but also the legacy of doing great by doing good and doing the right thing. And I'd like to thank everybody on this panel. Pat Rooney, thank you very much for your vision. Brian Cooley, lending EverFi's perspective. George Lindley, again, thank you for making this all possible. Mr. President, Minor League Baseball, thank you very much. And Steve Salem, on behalf of the Cal Ripken Senior Foundation, it is all part of a larger whole. South Florida will be the beneficiary of all this. Rick Horrow, thank you very much. See you next time.